Hi everyone, this is Real World Audio, and we are looking at a very interesting scenario. So let's see that we have two amplifiers in front of us. Let's say amplifier A and amplifier B, and both of them measure 1% second harmonic distortion. And let's say that hypothetically that there are no other distortion components to the sound, just alone that second harmonic distortion, and that's the only thing that's different. So that is same for the two amplifiers, but when you listen to them, they sound different. Why is that? And that is because it's not only the percentage of harmonic distortion that matters, but it's also the phase at which the distortion is added to the signal. So if it's added at the same phase, so there's 0 degrees phase angle difference, then that will sound natural, because the waves arrive to your ear at the same time and the brain will interpret it as the harmonic distortion, as the harmonic component accompanying the fundamental, and the brain will process it as natural information, as an additional shade to the sound, and it will not tamper with the spatial imaging. So it will not create artifacts for the brain that would make it that would scramble the three-dimensional information. However, if there is a phase difference between the harmonic component, the harmonic distortion, and the fundamental frequency, even if that phase difference is absolutely minimal, like a microsecond or less, in that case the brain will interpret it as altered spatial information. So that's why the imaging is worsened in that case, when the phase is not aligned between the harmonic distortion or harmonic component and the fundamental frequency. And here we go. This is the explanation why solid-state amplifiers sound flat compared to tube amplifiers. And you would think that, of course, if you have heard examples for both, then you know that tube amplifiers sound much more three-dimensional, and solid-state amplifiers sound much more like looking a flat screen. You still can have very pinpoint accurate imaging, but it's not a deep 3D layered image, it's a flat screen. And for a tube amplifier, it has a much greater dimensionality and texture to the imaging. And the reason is this, that in a tube amplifier, the distortion, the second harmonics for single-ended amps and the third harmonic for push-pull amplifiers, it is added in phase to the music, to the fundamental frequency. And because of that, it does not alter the spatial information content. For solid-state amplifiers, because of the high feedback applied, even though we have very little harmonic distortion component, in percentages maybe 100 or 1,000 times less than what we measure for a tube amplifier, yet because the feedback changes the phase at which the harmonic distortion is added, that's why it scrambles the spatial information and flattens out the imaging. So it's very crucial when you think about it, that it's not just the amount of harmonics that counts. The phase at which this distortion is added is absolutely crucial. And this is something that when you read a brochure, then never ever anyone is talking about this fact and mentioning whether the distortion added is in phase or out of phase. And I can tell you very easily, if your amplifier does not use any feedback, then the added distortion is in exact phase. And the more feedback an amplifier is using, the more out of phase it is. And sadly, feedback creates an effect that depending on the frequency, the phase distortion of the added harmonic content is different. And that's also another reason why imaging is getting destroyed in many solid-state amplifiers, because the ear cannot pinpoint a source of a sound, because an instrument makes a complex range of frequencies. For example, you are listening to a violin. It makes sounds from below 100 hertz, fundamentals and its subsonics, to 20 kilohertz and higher with its upper harmonic range. So imagine from about 100 hertz to 20 kilohertz, all of these sounds should have either no added harmonic distortion component, or if there is a harmonic distortion component, if it's added at the same phase for all of these frequencies from 100 hertz to 20k, then you will hear a violin that has a body and shape to it and sound like a living violin. If in the other case, even if the added harmonic distortion is really small, but it changes in phase between from 100 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and at each of the frequency where you sample, the added phase will be different. And that's why the violin sound just absolutely suck on a lot of solid-state platforms. And maybe there are some where violins are kind of tolerable, and yes, I have heard such solid-state amplifiers, but those amps are really far and few in between, and even they can the job they do with the violin sound is relatively, I would say, completely unacceptable compared to a good tube amplifier's sound. And that's the reason, because the phase distortion changes from frequency to frequency. And if you have an instrument that has a very limited frequency range, such as hearing, let's say, for example, a kettle drum, or where the frequencies are mainly in the deep bass, mid bass, upper bass, during those few octaves, the difference, the phase shift in the added feedback is not too great, and that's why solid-state amps can do a pretty good job with drums. Or if you look at saxophone, we are staying at just the upper registers, like 10 kilohertz and plus. There we also have a relatively similar phase component added to that saxophone sound. So that's why like a lot of jazz music tends to sound good on solid-state amps, because the instruments that are involved have limited frequency range and are not, they don't ask the amplifier to reveal its weaknesses. But if you listen to violin, you listen to a piano, or you listen to any other classical instrument with wider range, then you will notice that the imaging suffers greatly because of the vast phase difference of the harmonic distortion spectrum added at the lowest frequency range versus highest frequency range. So I hope everyone learned something here. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends. Bye bye.